when you're approaching fishing moving water. Medium rivers to small creeks to really deep high-sided high bank river situations to places where two big rivers come together. And you can see in the lower right-hand side just how different each of those rivers could be, just based on what sedimentation and things like that are in them, color of the water. It's a really interesting place to find fish. And kind of speaking to folks that maybe have had some experience fishing generally or angling generally on lakes and more calm waters that want to kind of get into a bit of a dynamic environment and moving water. And that's what we're going to discuss a little bit today. Real quick, this is going to be a brief slide here. These links are available in the chat. These are some links that I would refer to in this talk, and they're sources of additional information. The first one there, I'm always going to kind of sell this. The DNR has a lot of literature available, and it's mostly accessible and digital in that format. So you could get it a bunch of different ways depending on what you prefer. The first one there is a link to it's a boater's guide to the big rivers and pretty much all the navigable rivers in the state. There's maps for every single one of them. It's a great resource because that can kind of help you hone in on a place you want to go, or help you find places that are safe to fish, easy to access, and things like that. There's some techniques links here as well, and there's also just an article there that I cited about fishing rivers, big rivers, as a matter of fact, to give you some additional information after you are done with our session today. So, yep, see that? Got the DNR logo on my hat, got it on my sleeve, got to talk about the regulations. This is real important, and mostly the main thing in my mind, trying to help people fish and get folks out fishing, is to make sure that they're safe. They go out and you come home after your trip, you had a positive experience, and everybody returned safely. The other thing is understanding the regulations. On the rivers, we have rivers that are on our borders, St. Croix being an example, where two different states manage that body of water. It's very important because you might have some different regulations that govern how you can legally fish on the river. So having a regs book, once again, grabbing a PDF copy offline and having a look before you go is really important. It also it keeps you out of trouble. I don't want to see anyone get in trouble for just kind of not understanding or not knowing what they can and can't do in certain bodies of water. So keep that in mind before you go. I won't beat that point up anymore, but it's important that you carry this literature with you. So fishing on a river, if you're unaware of it, here in the state of Minnesota, it is a massive amount of water that are in rivers and streams. 6,564 rivers and streams in the state for a cumulative flow of 69,000 miles. That's all together. That kind of was a big fact to me. That's a lot of water. It means it's a huge opportunity for fishing, and rivers and streams are home to a wide range of fish species. When you're talking about cold water streams, it's anything from trout and to like more warm water streams and rivers that have the state fish, walleye, white crappie, smallmouth bass, things like gar that you don't see every day in the lakes. There's a lot of different fish species, and a big opportunity to get to those species if you're comfortable with fishing on rivers. And these include the big name rivers, the Mississippi, the Minnesota, the St. Croix. Those are always the ones that are close to my heart because I do live in the Twin Cities metro area, and these are the ones that I have access to, but it's not limited to that. There's a lot of them in the state. So taking advantage of that opens you up to a lot of different waters and a lot of opportunities to fish. So just like the regs talk in my slide, I said safety is always at the front of my mind. And I mentioned this in the first slide. Rivers are dynamic. They're always changing. Navigating them is one thing. Even being along the banks, even where the water is or the main flow channel is, can change over time. Even season to season as the water level changes because of melting snow, rain, things like that. This is something you need to keep in mind because an area that you fish may look a bit different in subsequent years. If you know it very well, know where some of the structure is, know where some of the places are nearby where you fished before, that could be different as soon as a year out because of moving debris, moving water. Moving water is a major force. That's another thing to consider here. even a very slow current can offer some serious hazards to people, and they can move faster and stronger than potentially you could swim. Or if it's a shallow situation, even wading can be difficult. Even wading can represent some hazards. So these are things that you must keep in mind and you want to learn about before you go ahead and venture towards those things. There's also constructed hazards. My example here on the right-hand side is a low head dam. A lot of these are being removed for a lot of different reasons, but they do exist, and you have to watch out for them. It's good to know where these things are because they can create some currents that can be pretty dangerous to people. So I'll say it before, you probably heard it a million times, know before you go. Seek out the information, talk to your local municipalities and kind of figure out where these things are. And if there's anything you need to know about the specific stretch of stream or river in that town before you even wet a line. And then don't go alone. Always have someone to fish with. That way, usually nowadays people have communication devices. You could call for help if you can't help each other immediately. And that's going to help keep you out of a bad situation. If not, if it comes to it, get you out of a bad situation. And then last thing I'll say about safety, when you're fishing by any body of water, I will never tell you that a personal flotation device is a bad idea. I think it's always a good idea to have on you. There's so many different kinds. My little example here in the corner, just a pretty standard looking life jacket, life vest, especially when you have a dynamic environment like a river and moving water. It's always good to have something like that. So getting to the meat of this talk, I covered, some of the important things here is where do you start? How do you start researching? I mentioned some of the river guides. Here's what our website looks like. You'll see these are all, if you go to the Department of Natural Resources website, it's a pretty easy search. I suppose if you're on this WebEx, you have some savvy. I'm a pretty analog guy. I'm okay with the internet. I'm pretty decent about searching things. It's pretty easy to find this stuff. And then this will give you some really good resources to be able to travel by foot or by car to a lot of the fishable water and especially the bigger rivers we have. But almost, if I go out into the lobby of the building I'm in right now, we have lots of individual maps of stretches and streams that go for all those miles that we discussed. So this could get you to the places that you'd want to fish. Start there. Do a little bit of research. Figure out where you think you want to go. They'll tell you a lot of things too, what amenities might be nearby these places where you could fish and things like that could, not only provide for you a place to fish and recreation that way, but something nearby that you can make a day out of. It's a good resource to start with. So getting to the actual river, scouting is a very important thing. Say, for instance, I picked this little spot in Harriet Island, St. Paul. I used to live nearby here. I fished this a few times. If I'm looking at this picture, without knowing anything about what's on the bottom of the river or any kind of things that I can't see yet, I could pick out about 4 different types of places that I could fish right in this picture on the waterfront, including the dock, the lower left, the riprap that extends down the middle, even the little kind of amphitheater type stairs. I believe those are stairways to some of the river boats, but they tend to be all right places to fish. And then kind of tucked in back behind that riverboat there would offer me at least 4 options to fish. And I could do that just by kind of having a look. The other thing is, I know this is by a park. It's got walking paths. It's easy to access. I can look at this and go, well, I could fish there. And it is, I know for a fact that you could fish off of those docks there most of the time. And there's a lot of them along that riverfront. I probably don't need to have waders or, any kind of special equipment where I need to go trudging through the woods to fish this waterfront. And just by looking at this picture, I could get all that information. Just trying to give you an idea of what I might look at before I even go. So getting into the conditions of the river themselves, seasonally, this is gonna be pretty important. In the spring, when the snow melts, the water is going to be high. If you've been on bridges going over the rivers and seen the backwaters of the Minnesota River here in town, or any place there's wetlands that surround rivers, you kind of have an idea when it's high water. Those places tend to be flooded, and the river's flowing. There's a lot of snow melt happening. There's trees and sticks and things like that moving down the river, and you get the high water situations. I wouldn't say don't fish these situations, but what you will find is high water, it's more difficult to find fish. It makes sense. There's just more places for them to go, more area, more backwater connections, higher flow velocity typically, and more water to drain. I have a little asterisk there because typically higher water means more flow. That water has to drain or faster flow, but that doesn't mean you won't find fast moving water in low water level situations. However, low water levels, fish are more concentrated. There's cover types that are going to be exposed. There's going to be places that you are going to be familiar with after this talk that are going to be places that you are going to find fish, and they're easier to see. If you look at my picture here on the left, or excuse me, on the right, pardon me, this is a low water situation. This is how you can kind of diagnose that, because if you see the bank edges, you see kind of where the plants end coming near the water's edge. That's a pretty good indicator that the water there can be higher at different times of year because it doesn't give vegetation a chance to grow there. But you could see a walkout. You could see a walkout dock there. You could see a little, if you look kind of, I guess downstream from that, you could see what would be a little point if there was a little more water there. Just situations like that, even the log that's on the bank there, if that's covered by water, that offers a place for fish to go. So lower water exposes different cover, and then you have lower flow velocity, which could mean a little lighter gear, a little less line weight, and a little lighter sinker. We'll talk about that as we go along. The name of the game is refuge, otherwise known, I mentioned it already, as cover. Places for fish to seek protection from their predators, which usually are bigger fish and birds. Refuge from the current. I don't know how many of you are Olympic swimmers or just recreational swimmers. Swimming in current after a little while gets me tired, at least, and it's the same for fish. So they're going to need to take breaks from the current, and anything that does offer shelter from the current, we'll talk about those different things, is going to be a place that you might find fish. And these are hiding places for fish to ambush prey, or fish actually utilize areas where current will move their prey or food into a pocket or by a boulder or something like that. And fish will kind of be near those, hiding behind those, waiting to dash out, ambush their food and get a good meal when they're putting the feed bag on, so to speak. So these are all things that you want to look for. Just like in a lake, cover is important in fishing a river. We're going to kind of break these down into different areas here. Calm areas and eddies, backwaters, you're going to find fish there. Whirlpools can indicate where water is going into an inlet. This offers fish a break from fast current and often holds prey species. This is a place that you're going to look along your stretch of river where you want to fish. If you find these areas, they're good spots to fish. Stumps and vegetation in the water, overhanging, laid down trees. They offer shade and protection from birds, and fish are generally going to be there because prey are also going to be hiding underneath. Islands, boulders, these also include constructed things like bridge pilings, either for a bridge that's still in use or old bridges, things like that. And these can be indicated a bunch of different ways. You can actually see them under low water conditions, or you could see water and flow disrupted. When water's moving over these things, you see kind of what looks like confused water on the top or swirls, things like that, pointed shaped waves. These are things that indicate underwater structure like boulders. And then once again, you can physically see old bridge abutments and bridge pilings and things like that. Fish rest on the downstream side, and fish utilize the upstream side to feed. Usually bait fish and food gets pushed up against the front edges of these things. If you look at our little picture here with the boulders, and fish come out from behind these things or sit in front of them, just pretty much waiting for the food to swim generally into their mouths. Walleye use this tactic on what are called wing dams. They're man-made structures in rivers that direct the current flow so barges can navigate the center channel of the river, and they're a great place to find fish. And this is indicated by disruption of flow on the surface, that as you kind of go to the river, it get more and more easy to tell where they are. Emerging currents. Way back in the first slide of my presentation, you saw where the two different colors of water. I believe that's the St. Croix and the Mississippi coming together. And this is the cartoon version of that. Fish will put themselves into those two merging currents, the cloudy water maybe mixing with clear water, currents going a little bit different directions. This could be where a smaller stream comes into a river, two medium-sized rivers merge to make a bigger channel. It's often a great place to fish because bait fish and food become confused in those changing currents, and predator fish take advantage of that. And if those are your target species, that's a great place to find them. And then the last kind of structure I'll talk about here. And these animations here are the outside bends. Fish feed in these areas because faster current carries food. And just like I mentioned with the wing dams and the boulders, smaller fish that can't swim against stronger currents are going to get pushed where the water's going. And larger predatory fish that are strong enough to hold their position in those areas are going to be there waiting for the food. And the idea would be then to get your lure or presentation in those areas where they're feeding, and hopefully you have some success that way. All these things have stuff in common. They just are places that fish utilize in a river. And like I said, a lot of the same things you might apply to lake fishing with cover applies to the river. The difference is the current and the direction it's flowing. Just want to talk a little bit about some more fish examples. I mean, in streams and rivers, depending on the water clarity, the water temperature, you're going to find a vast range of species. The one reason I put the walleye and the sauger here up top, especially if you're in the metro area, the rivers are generally my favorite place to fish for walleye if I'm fishing in the Twin Cities. I just think it's the highest percentage area to catch walleye. That's not to discount some of the lakes we have around here, but river fishing for walleye has always been a favorite thing of mine to do since I was a little kid, and here is no exception. You're going to find some interesting fish like gar, long nose, and short nose. You find these a lot in the southern reaches of the Mississippi River, and maybe they're not quite as common to folks here that live in Minnesota. You don't see these in lakes too much. Now, if you see gar all the time, I don't mean to insult you there, but it's the river is a place where you're going to see some fish that you're not used to seeing in your typical neighborhood lake, fin pond, or even some medium-sized lakes around. Drum is another species that are often found in the river. They are in some lakes. That's the one, the middle left-hand fish there. And then you have some opportunity for size. My example here is the flathead catfish. The river is one of the places, especially the Minnesota River, where you can catch fish that can range from 30 to 50 pounds. And it's a place that you can go fishing for large fish if you have the right gear and you get some of these techniques down. So the river, once again, offers some variety and some things that gives you access to some things you might not otherwise have had you not tried the river. Equipment that you need. The nice thing is really there's some misconceptions about how heavy you need to be. And you could fish in the river and in backwaters and in creeks and streams with everything from light line and light action all the way up to very heavy line and very heavy action. It's going to depend on two things: your target species and the size of fish you were targeting, and also the current speed. And I have that kind of written down here. I know it's a lot of wordy slide here, but faster current speed, larger target species, you need to increase your rating on your pole from up to the heavier action and bigger pound test line, down to, there are a lot of, in a lot of ways, a lot of things that I've learned over the years working with the DNR. Some of the river backwaters, and even just off the main parts of the channel, end up offering some really good bluegill sunfish fishing, and you don't need super heavy catfish rods to do that. So it's going to vary depending on the current speed and the size of the fish you're after. So don't be afraid to use your lake pole in the river, and don't think that you need to buy whole new setups depending on what you're trying to catch. Now, adjust your equipment accordingly. This is my not so funny stab at humor here. I do love to go offshore fishing when I can in the ocean. Once again, just trying to dispel the misconception that you need the biggest possible rod and reel available in order to fish the river. If you're fishing for big catfish, you need a stout pole with heavy line, but it's not always the case. And I'm hoping to dispel a little bit of the fear and mystique that comes along with that. There's a lot of different situations where a lot of different applications are going to be just fine. Some rigs to use in bait. Once again, not far off from what you might use in a lake. A Carolina rig is a good one to know, and it's right here in the picture on the upper left. Pretty much what you're looking for is a sinker that runs through your main line, a bit of leader material, anywhere from, you can make it really, really long, down to about a foot long, that attaches to your hook. And a lot of the things pictured here in this Carolina rig are largely dependent on what you want to present to the fish, but they could be something as simple as a hook that you would put a piece of live bait on, cut bait or something like that, or any of the things we'll mention. But the idea here is that allows the bait and the line to move freely in the flow. And the idea is that the sinker gets the rigging to where the fish are biting. And it's one of the most common rigs to use and one of the most simple rigs to tie. And from anywhere to a beginner novice angler to some of the most advanced anglers that fish the river will tell you about the use of the Carolina rig. Some of the other things include spinner baits and stick baits or crank baits, any number of different hooks depending on what you're trying to catch. And then the lower right, I don't know if there's a more versatile lure than your average jig. You can add a lot of different things to these. You could fish lakes with them, you could fish rivers with them, as long as they have enough weight to cope with the current. The variety of colors and the relative ease with which you can get some of these, it's a great lure to use when you're in the river. These are some examples of sinkers you would use for your rigs. Only thing I want to tell you here is they're going to come in a variety of different ways. You want to adjust your weight so it can cope with the current. The main thing here is that the sinkers that I like to use in the river don't have sharp edges on them. Those are things you want to use when you're fishing in pretty much sand bottom type situations. These are meant to bounce off of rocks. They're meant to hopefully avoid snags, and some of them are meant to make your bait be able to kind of flow freely without interrupting the fish as they're eating your bait, meaning they don't feel the weight because they move through the line. But these are some examples of some of the sinkers that you want to use. Some examples for bait, anything that you use in lake applications you can use in the river. Night crawlers can apply broadly almost anywhere that you fish, and they could catch almost any fish that we have in the state at some time throughout the year. If you want to take out the gross out factor, sometimes a good old can of corn that you hook up with a bunch of kernels could be just as effective if you don't like to handle worms, leeches, or live minnows. But any one of these baits will work in the river just like they work in the lakes. All this stuff, we got all this information, man, all this research we had to do. Well, now what the heck do we do? Well, this is what I do when I approach the river. I've done all that work. I figured out what gear I want. I picked my spot. I know where I'm going to fish. The thing I like to do with moving water is always start with a moving bait. If you're comfortable with casting lures, spinner baits, things like this, these jerk baits, crank baits, stuff like this. If you look at my camera, if you look down at me, like this, anything that as you reel it in has swimming action, I start with that. The reason I do that is because sometimes you're there on a magical day where fish seem to be chasing bait and chasing a lure all the way up onto the rocks. I'm going to know that within a few minutes of fishing when I'm casting those baits. It just happens. It happens with white bass. It happens with striped bass if you like the saltwater fish in rivers. It will happen with walleye at certain times of year, smallmouth bass. It's just one of those magical days when fish are actively feeding and chasing. It can make for a very fun day of fishing. But as you kind of adjust, as the day moves along, or as that doesn't seem to be as effective, then you can move to slower presentations. And that's kind of how I like to fish the river. Fishing fast first to slow, and then going into the bottom fishing rigs like the Carolina rig and live bait type applications. And you can judge that based on what you already know about current and what you already know about where the cover is, because you've researched the area where you're fishing. And this is a wired to fish and in fisherman kind of thing. It's a little modification of that. Fish plus the fish you're fishing for, the location you're fishing, and the presentation is hopefully going to equal success for you. And I can't drive home the point enough. Many of the same tactics and environmental factors that you apply to fishing, lake fishing, apply to the river. Time of day is important. Morning and evenings usually are best. Weather is going to be a bit important. I prefer an overcast day. That seems to extend the bite because that usually keeps the water temperature a slight bit cooler. Fish that are very, very, very visual utilize low light conditions to sneak up on things they want to eat. Water temperature, a degree or so cooler, even in the dead of summer, can make a big difference if the fish are eating or not. And then air temperature has a little bit influence on water temperature that also factors in to how active the fish are. But then what do I do? How do I cast in a river? You use the current. Cast upstream, because the fish, I think I mentioned this before, they're going to have their nose into the current, the front of their body into the current. That's how they're streamlined, that's how they're shaped, that's how they can move most efficiently through the current, and that's how they're going to see prey that's going to come down the current towards them. You cast upstream and let the current take your bait downstream and hopefully right into the mouth of the fish. If you've selected your weight right, you have the lure that you're using that you like, you have enough weight on your line to cope with the current, hopefully it's going to put you in an area where fish are going to be. So if you cast downstream, what this does is it kind of defeats your fishing. If you look at my drawing on the left-hand side, you're going to be reeling bait past the fish from the back. It's going to be going over their head. They're not going to see it in time. Whereas if you drift it down to them using the current, a lot of times it's going to go right up to their nose. And if they want to eat it, they're going to take it right there. So this is an important thing to learn, casting upstream and using the current as you fish in moving water. Like I said, I've said this a couple times before, sinker weight, holding bottom is important too. You need to get to where the fish are. And this is a good kind of, this is the best example I could come up with. If the weight's too light, it's going to be maybe above where the fish are, not in the water where the fish are holding. There's a possibility to pull fish off the bottom, but if you look at the far left, that's the right weight. It's nearby the fish. It's where the fish can detect your bait. You can see the direction arrow for the current. It's going to drift that bait right down to where the fish are. Now, the way that you determine that, once again, is by all the work that you did prior. You determine how fast the current's moving. You determine the area you want to fish, if it's a backwater, things like that. And that's going to help you pick what you need and hopefully get you in where the fish are. Here it is, the quick summary. My less than precise and super technical talk, but what I hope you took out of this is if I can do it, you can do it. And these are some things that you want to think about. Consult people with previous fishing experience in the same river. It's great to build community with fishing, and most people that I know aren't very stingy about teaching you how to fish a certain section of river. They might not give you the exact hot spot that they have, but generally they're going to be able to tell you what to avoid and where maybe to focus your effort. Look up the fish species on the river you want to fish. The more you know about the fish you're trying to catch, the better you're going to be with bait selection, weight selection, and places that you're going to find them. Local anglers and river fishing related businesses are usually going to give you pretty darn good information as it applies to techniques, at least. Like I said, if they don't give away their hot spots, they might be willing to help you out. I don't see why it doesn't behoove people that work at bait stores to not talk about fishing to their customers, because they want to keep them coming back to buy more bait. They want to have you have success. So they're usually going to be pretty good sources of information too. Scouting the riverbanks before you go on the fishing trip itself, that's going to help you in a lot of different ways, ranging from safety to where the good cover is to where some of the changing currents are, all the things we talked about. If you know where they are at already, even under changing conditions, it's going to familiarize you with the area, and you're going to be able to waste less time doing that on the day you want to fish. Fish in the right places, those high percentage spots we talked to you about, the outside bends, current breaks, eddies, changing current, confluences where two rivers meet. These are places that are going to hold fish. Adjust your fishing line to the kind of current. That goes for the weight too. The heavier the current, the faster the current, the heavier the sinker, and the heavier the line and the equipment you need to use. All the way from light up to medium heavy to heavy, and keep safety in the forefront of your mind as you go. Once again, it's nothing like catching big fish on the river, but there's also something to be said for we want you to make it to wherever you're going after you fish safe, and so you can come back and fish again. Didn't mean to kind of speed up too much at the end there, but I could go on. People that know me know that I could go on and on and on for hours on this stuff. But I'd like to take time for your questions and any comments that you might have. Hopefully you got something out of this talk, and if I wasn't clear on certain things, we can clear that up now. That is usually people hold up huge fish that they've caught. This is my my homage to the underloved, underappreciated northern pike. That's about a medium-sized fish. So that's about the kind of angler that I am. So I wanted to be representative of what I might catch on a more daily basis. But there it is, and I'll take your questions and comments.
Okay, Mario, if you could shut down your presentation, that'll give the folks a bigger view of the presenters. And I liked the fact you talked about selecting a rod for the species and the conditions you were going to be in. And you know, when we'd go out and fish the river, there was areas that we knew would hold the sunfish, like the oxbows and stuff. We'd head back there. And Cassie, if you want to shut down there we go. You know, so we'd have a real light rod for fishing crappies and sunfish. There was perch in there too that we'd go after. And then when we go out and fish for the heavier fish, the walleyes and the northerns, we'd up the style of rod we were using, the type of lure we were going to use, and the line. And these don't have to be real expensive setups. You know, you can go to your local big box store or fishing retailer and pick up the equipment that you need. You know, for probably under $20, you can get a entry-level fishing rod to be able to go out and go after a lot of these species. I've fished with lures, jigs that have been 3/4 of an ounce on some real fast-moving rivers, and it slowed the bait down enough that the walleyes were interested in it. The light jigs would just flow down the stream and they wouldn't pick it up. And where I'm at in northern Minnesota, the Mississippi River is, it can be as narrow as maybe 30 yards across. And so you got to be kind of careful when you cast, because you could cast your line all the way across that body of water. Looking for certain structure, rock piles, stuff like that to fish for primarily walleye and weed lines for northerns, and getting that bait just on the outside of that weed edge and letting it set with a bobber or and I was always a live bait fisherman. Minnows tended to be the thing that we would use the most for live bait. We did use some like rapalas and stuff in one area of the river. It was very narrow across there, and we would cast out to where we knew the channel was and bring these golden countdown rapalas back in, and the fish would be pulled up because of the lower water level there, and you know, we'd be able to catch our fish right there. So it's another opportunity to get out there and fish a different body of water. Rivers will have every fish that you'll find in a lake, but they're not always in the specific spots that you can find them in a lake. I see we got a question here. It seems like fishing can be really good right below dams. Can you explain why that is, or why that's the case, and the tips for fishing below dams? Well, the first thing that you know comes to my mind is the safety feature. How close can you fish to a dam, Mario?
Well, I mean, for most of the time on big rivers like that, or so if you're talking those kind of dams, not very, because they usually have them roped off, but like low head dams and things like that, the one that comes to mind, and I think they're actually going to remove it, is the one on the Crow River. I guess it's in Watertown there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you could a lot of times you could walk right up to those things if there's place to stand on the bank and cast right in front of them. And it's, you know, other than watching your footing, staying well back from the water and not kind of getting caught up in the flow, they're great places to fish, because if you recall can you guys hear me okay? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. If you recall one of my slides where I had that picture of the low head dam, anywhere there's crossing currents, turbulence, that tends to pull small bait fish into those areas, and they get tossed up in that washing machine situation. And as they're trying to kind of escape that, larger fish that are trying to eat them are pretty much just waiting for them to either get pushed out of that current, or the large fish are strong enough to swim into that current and eat them there. It concentrates bait. It makes them swim around kind of confused. It takes away their ability to school together really well for their safety in numbers things, and it allows them to pick off individuals more easily than if, put them on equal footing in calmer water. It's harder for fish to catch bait, and it's one of those places that bait gets concentrated, and big predatory fish, big predatory fish means just bigger than the minnow, but they go there to when they're feeding, and that's just one of those areas where currents come together, and they're places where big fish feed.
The other part of that question, that man-made barrier across the river, it's a barrier that the fish can't get over. We don't have many fish ladders here, so the fish are kind of congregated there, and every species of fish that you're going to think of could be nosed up to that structure. Thinking of dams here in northern Minnesota, there's usually signs that say no fishing within 300 feet of the dam. It's because the current is just too strong out there that if you fell in, you'd be in danger of being swept downstream.
Yeah, hence the talk with safety. Can't stress that enough. I mean, that depends upon, a lot of times, upon the municipality, the person's particular preference for staying away from those situations. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, you don't want anyone going in there. So there are a lot of times there's fences around those structures. It also depends on the time of year too. I mean, under high flow situations where you can't see them quite as well, clearly higher water represents more a bit of a danger there. And then also just the amount of water that's going over a dam. If you think also, like we're talking like more like somewhat smaller to medium sized rivers, you also have to consider locks and things like that. That's a huge amount of water going under there, and those are strictly forbidden. One, because they're run a lot of times by the federal government and the U.S. Corps of Engineers, and they don't want you near the locks anyhow. But also they have those clearly marked, roped off, and you don't have foot access to a lot of those places for a good reason. And mostly it's safety and security. Yeah.
These two questions I think we can tie together. One is fishing in Oxbow, and they were getting caught up on branches and stuff that were under the water line. And the other one is using bobbers. Can you use a bobber in the river? Yep. And that might be the ticket to help drift your lure over top of that live bait rig, over top of those submerged branches. The fish are going to use those for cover. Like Mario had said in his presentation, they're going to find those logs and brush. It's going to give them cover. It's going to give the bait fish a little spot to hide, and the other fish are going to move in there to feed on those. Just try to regulate your depth by use of the bobber, and that'll keep your line up above the trees and branches there.
Yeah, that goes back to my talk about, I didn't want to, I kind of was limiting that to moving lures, how kind of I spelled out a little bit of my technique when I go to start fishing. But that could also be fishing fast, fishing with a bobber, letting it go along. It's just depends on your comfort, but that's, if you want to get over that cover, and if fish are actively feeding up in the water column close to the surface, that's a really good technique to get live bait to them, worms or things like that, allowing the current to move it too. So you're not just limited when fish are up and feeding and moving about. You're not just limited to using crankbaits or things like that. That's an absolutely good application for a bobber in current. And then, not to mention, we did also talk about situations, and you'll find, one of the things about my picture that it's hard to see at the beginning of the talk is behind those docks and in St. Paul and other places where there's marinas, those are those inlets, or that you're going to find calm water that connects to a river that you could fish just like you would fish a dock in a small lake, because the flow, there's not going to be that main channel flow through there. And you could fish, if you're more comfortable fishing a stationary bobber, that's in the river. You're going to have access to a lot of the same species that are going to be out near the channel, because they could be in there at rest, or they could be in there chasing things that they're going to eat in calmer water and taking a break from the current. So yeah, absolutely, a bobber can work in a lot of applications in the river.
We had a question about being recorded. Yes, the episode is going to be recorded, and I failed to mention that earlier, but all of these presentations are going to be recorded, so you can go back and watch over them again. It's just a nice reminder of things that you can do with what we have available here in the state. One of the things that Mario touched upon, a lot of times along the river, a lot of that can be private property. And when we were kids, 10, 11, 12 years old, we would, as a group, we would all go out and knock on the doors of the neighbors and ask permission to fish from their shoreline. And I don't think we were ever turned down once. They see a group of kids that wanted to go fishing, and they were willing to let us go out and fish from their shoreline or whatever. But there's a lot of public areas along rivers, picnic areas and stuff like that are open for public use. And I'm just thinking of the government dam. We had Army Corps of Engineers dam, and they had a big picnic area, and we would have scouting picnics and stuff there, and we'd always go down and fish. And when you get large groups of people like that, you got to be really careful when you're casting those lures. I can think of a few scouts that got a hook put into their uniform because the caster and the person watching the casting got too close together. So just be real cognizant of how close you get to other people when you're out there. Sometimes people will use a lure with multiple treble hooks on them, and you don't want to get one of those stuck in you.
I got a question about snags, and this is a tough one because I'll try to help you as much as I can here. One challenge my friends and I have run into making the switch to river fishing is that whenever we try to fish the bottom, we always get snagged up really bad. Any tips on avoiding snags? I tell you, if I had an invention that helped everybody avoid snags, I'd be a super genius. Because but here's the truth. It happens to everybody, but the one I mentioned it in my talk a little bit is really being able to select the sinker if you're fishing the bottom that is going to minimize its propensity to get caught in cracks and its ability to not bounce off of things. So what I was trying to say about that is that those egg sinkers, I mean, and you could say, well, Mario, geez, even if I use those, they get snagged up. I mean, sometimes that happens. But also you could also look, so there's a couple things at play here. Using rounded sinkers, that bank sinker type sinkers, egg sinkers, bullet sinkers, that you're not, if you're dragging it through the water, it's not going to have a big flat surface or edge to catch on sticks as much. And it's going to have an ability to, depending on how long rocks have been in current, they tend to smooth out. So the less you have, the more streamlined you could be dragging over those things, the less you are going to generally snag. But there's two other things that you can do. The use of offset hooks, and if you're using plastics, you could rig it in weedless situations where you actually hook it back through the bait. Now that changes a little bit how you want to set the hook. It's going to require a little bit more technique, but that'll keep the hook from snagging on sticks more. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing is try to diagnose a little bit more of the area that you're fishing. That's either by, all right, going to the place multiple times to seeing if what you're snagged on then becomes exposed by low water. And you can say, well, okay, we fish all the time here and we always get snagged. Well, there's a huge tree down there and this is where it's located. That's by looking at things like how the water flows over it, and then potentially just adjusting where you're fishing within that area to, by using telltale signs in the water to find, gravel areas on the bottom that aren't going to have as many hangs. So I understand what you're saying, though. Sometimes fish are so tight to cover and it's so tight to trees that if you're going to get them, you got to get into that stuff, and it's a percentage game where you're going to get snagged and you're going to lose a rig on occasion. It's hard to tell what's going to be on the bottom of a river, and unfortunately, in the cities, it could be anything from a motorized scooter to a rental bike that might not have been there the time before. But my suggestion would be to kind of decrease the surface area of things that can snag. Try that, try fishing, try adjusting where you are around the cover that you're trying to fish to not go directly into where those big hangs are. And try rigging some weedless techniques that'll help reduce the amount of hook snagging you're going to do as well.
James, you got anything on your side?
No, I don't. I just want to say that, one of the things that I really like about river fishing versus lake fishing, the same species of fish act very differently in those two settings. I give Craig a lot of grief because, when I'm lake fishing and I hit a walleye, half the time I don't know if it's a snagged log or a weed patch until it gets up and sees the boat. But when you're in the river and you hook into a walleye, they'll fight, and they'll fight from the second they're hooked. And so, being in that moving environment, being in that dynamic system that Mario talked about, the fish behaviors are very different. Side by side comparison, and so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be out there. Small fish put up a big fight because all they do is move in that river, and so they're used to it. They're toned up. They're not like those lazy lake fish that just have to sit there and hunker down on the bottom, and they got to work. They got to work for their supper in a river system. So it's a lot of fun to fish them. It's a lot of fun to hook into them, and I really appreciate Mario sharing his knowledge with us today.
Well, guys, we're about 10 minutes to. If there's no more questions that have come in, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's show. Thank you for tuning in. Mario, thank you for giving your time and talent to us. It's always
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your time, everybody.
All right. Take care. Cassie, if you can take us back to the green room, that'd be great.